Have you ever stopped to think about how many incredible machines humanity has designed to conquer the most extreme places on Earth, only for some of them to never go beyond the blueprint or end up buried under the snow? There is something both magical and a little melancholic about looking at these creations. These were vehicles built to travel across frozen landscapes, survive ice storms, and take people where no one had ever gone before. Yet, for one reason or another, they were abandoned along the way. Why do such promising projects fail? What went wrong? Was it the technology, political decisions, or just the cost of dreaming too big? Today, we are going on a journey to uncover the story behind off-road snow machines that had their production canceled. Machines that were built to dominate the cold, but ended up frozen in time. Ready to discover the legends that never reached the top? Stay with me, because the last one on this list will surprise you. Rhino Amphibious Snow Vehicle. Few off-road machines in engineering history have ever made such a bold visual impact as the Rhino Amphibious Snow Vehicle. Built in the United States by the Rex Tractor Company in the early 1960s, the Rhino was an ambitious and highly unusual experiment. It attempted to solve the challenge of moving through soft snow, mud, swamps, and semi-frozen terrain all in one design. But it became a perfect example of when creativity goes further than practicality. What immediately caught attention was its unique propulsion system. Instead of using regular tracks or wheels, the Rhino was equipped with two large metal drums shaped like giant screws, mounted side by side. Each rotated in the opposite direction, pushing the machine forward using the principle of helical motion. It looked as if the Rhino was threading its way through the terrain, digging into snow, mud, and ice with ease. While strange to look at, the system worked fairly well on soft ground. It also made the Rhino amphibious. It could float and move across water by using the same rotating drums as paddles. This was a creative solution for regions where frozen ground could easily turn into dangerous water crossings. Its engine was located in the rear. A four-cylinder air-cooled gasoline engine produced about 50 horsepower. While the power was modest, the lightweight body and screw propulsion made it surprisingly effective on unstable surfaces. The cabin looked like a small submarine dome, with rounded windows, tall side mirrors, and a central antenna. The design had the feel of a 1960s science fiction cartoon. Unique in appearance and effective in very specific situations, the Rhino was a victim of its own daring concept. It was slow, hard to control on solid ground, and nearly useless on dry land or rocky terrain. Maintenance was difficult, and the screw drive system wore out quickly under stress. Production never went beyond testing. Only a few units were built for military and environmental trials. But the project did not move forward. High manufacturing costs, limited applications, and difficulty of use sealed its fate. Today, the Rhino Amphibious Snow Vehicle is considered a cult classic among collectors of rare vehicles. A restored unit has been displayed at vintage auto shows in the United States, and its unusual look has earned it a place in science fiction films. But more than anything, it is remembered as a bold idea that never found a place in the real world. If that design looked wild to you, wait until you see the next machine. It aimed to be even more versatile, but ended up stuck in the snow just the same. Kristi, all versions. Between the 1950s and 1970s, while companies around the world searched for new ways to conquer snowy terrain, one American company offered a creative and promising solution. It was called Kristi. Manufactured by Christy Snowcat, this vehicle had a bold vision. It was designed to be lightweight, compact, amphibious, and futuristic. The goal was to create a machine that could move over snow and even cross frozen swamps or shallow lakes, all while offering comfort and style. Over the years, several versions were released, including the KT2, KT3, and KT4. They all shared the same innovative spirit, but with technical improvements in performance and design. The most common engine was a four-cylinder, air-cooled gasoline engine, producing between 50 and 80 horsepower, depending on the model. Power was sent to the rear tracks, and the front skis were used for steering. What really made the Kristi stand out was its appearance. The body looked like a space capsule from the 1960s with rounded lines, a tall cabin, large windows, and a short nose. The structure was made of aluminum, which helped keep the vehicle light and allowed it to float. However, the suspension is basic and stiff, which limited comfort on rough terrain. The Kristi was designed to be an affordable snow vehicle for rural property owners, remote station operators, search and rescue teams, and even recreational users. But the bold design ran into real-world problems. It had trouble climbing steep slopes, offered limited cargo space, and struggled in deep snow or thick ice. Its amphibious system worked, but it was slow and difficult to control in water. Over time, larger and more practical vehicles dominated the market. Companies like Tucker, Thiokol, and Bombardier introduced stronger, more reliable machines that were easier to maintain. The Kristi, despite its charm, lost ground. The company could not continue large-scale production and eventually shut down. Although it failed commercially, the Kristi still lives on as a collector's item and a symbol of innovation. One KT3 was fully restored and shown at an event in Alaska, where its retro style attracted a lot of attention. Another version was bought by a European collector purely for its unusual appearance. He compared it to a cross between a snowmobile and a space capsule. Today, Kristi is remembered as a snow vehicle ahead of its time. It was a bold attempt to blend form and function, but one that could not survive the harsh realities of deep snow and freezing temperatures. And if that tracked capsule already seemed daring, the next machine proves how even small ideas can fail when they do not deliver as expected. Aktiv Snow-Trac. Between the 1950s and 1980s, a small and curious machine quietly made its way across some of the coldest regions of Europe and beyond. Its name was Aktiv Snow-Trac. Built in Sweden by the company Aktiv Östersund AB. This compact snowcat stood out for its smart combination of efficiency, lightweight, and reliability, all in a package no bigger than a compact car, for a good while. It was considered the gold standard in personal snow transport. Production began in 1957 and continued until 1981. Its design looked like a mini armored vehicle. With a fully enclosed cabin, a metal body, and reinforced rubber tracks, it was built to safely cross deep snow. It was used by both civilians and government agencies in countries with harsh winters, including Norway, the United Kingdom, and Canada. The most common engine came from Volkswagen. It was an air-cooled four-cylinder with around 1,600 cubic centimeters. Depending on the version, it delivered between 36 and 45 horsepower. Modest, but reliable. It was the same engine found in many classic Volkswagen Beetles of that era. Power was sent to the two rear tracks, and steering was controlled by levers that operated the brakes on each track individually, just like in tanks. It wasn't the easiest thing to drive at first, but a little practice was all it took. Visually, the Snowtrack was compact but tough. The enclosed cabin kept passengers safe from freezing temperatures and could carry up to 7 people, depending on how it was configured. It was commonly used for border patrol, power line maintenance, reaching remote cabins, and even transporting scientists at weather stations in mountain regions. The deep sound of the Volkswagen engine, mixed with the steady grind of rubber tracks across snow, became a familiar noise in those environments. The Snowtrack earned respect for its durability and mechanical simplicity. It was easy to fix, parts were affordable, and it handled long-term use in brutal conditions with no problem. Still, it eventually came to an end for business reasons. In 1981, Volkswagen stopped producing the engine that powered the Snowtrack. Without a replacement and with rising costs for redesign, Aktiv made the decision to end production. Even so, many Snowtracks continued to operate for years after the factory shut down. Some were fully restored and are now on display in museums or used in tourist rides in cold regions. One still runs snowy trails in Iceland, taking visitors to a glacial lookout, and one even appeared in a British film as a snow rescue vehicle. The Aktiv Snow-Track is remembered as one of the most reliable machines ever built for frozen environments. It wasn't flashy or over the top. It simply did its job with quiet strength and steady persistence. If you're enjoying this journey through the forgotten side of snow engineering, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. We're working hard to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and every click helps keep these stories alive. Be part of this project, subscribe now, hit the bell, and come along with us as we explore these frozen legends of engineering. Now stay with me, because if this little Swedish machine earned respect through efficiency, the next one shows what happens when even legendary brands face challenges that engineering alone couldn't overcome. Bombardier Snow-Bus. If there's one name that helped shape the history of snow travel, it's Bombardier. But long before modern snowmobiles hit the market, the Canadian company created something that looked like it came straight out of a frozen dream. The Bombardier Snow-Bus. Developed in the 1940s and produced into the 1970s, this true snow bus was designed to carry people through remote regions where winter made regular roads nearly useless. The Snow-Bus was one of the first track-driven vehicles built specifically for civilian use in snowy areas. Its creator, Joseph Armand Bombardier, came up with the idea after losing a family member who couldn't reach a hospital in time because of deep snow. Driven by that personal tragedy, he committed to building a machine that could survive the brutal Canadian winters and save lives. The Snow-Bus had a very distinct look, with a boxy metal body painted in red or orange, rectangular windows, and a structure that looked like a microbus mounted on wide rear tracks and front skis. It stood out anywhere. Early models used 6-cylinder gasoline engines, which produced around 110 horsepower. That power went to the rear tracks, while the skis in the front allowed for surprisingly accurate steering. Its suspension was basic but effective. The enclosed cabin offered solid protection from the cold and could carry up to 15 passengers. Because of that, it quickly became popular with government agencies, rural schools, mail services, and even hotels located near ski resorts. In places like Val-d'Or, Canada, it was common to see snow buses moving workers, students, and supplies during snowstorms. Even though it was reliable and iconic in its time, the Bombardier Snow-Bus eventually began to fade from use, not because of a flaw in its design, but because of changing times. As more roads started to be paved and kept clear during the winter, regular vehicles with snow tires became good enough for most travel routes. On top of that, maintaining the Snow-Bus was expensive. Its tracks wore out over time, required skilled labor to replace, and spare parts were often hard to find, especially in remote areas. Slowly, production ended in the 1970s. Today, a few restored models still exist. One is used for guided tours in Quebec. Another is displayed in the Canada Science and Technology Museum, where it stands as a symbol of innovation born from necessity. Even though its production was cancelled, the Snow-Bus remains one of the most iconic snow vehicles ever built. And if this machine was made to move large groups of people across frozen terrain, the next one on the list was designed with the exact opposite in mind. Light, compact, and built for tight spots where only 1 or 2 people could go. Tucker Sno-Kitten. When it comes to off-road snow vehicles, the name Tucker Snowcat is one of the most respected in the business. But not everyone knows about the Tucker Sno-Kitten, an extremely compact version built with a very specific goal in mind. It was designed to be light, agile, and capable of reaching places where larger machines simply couldn't operate. Developed in the United States during the 1950s, the Sno-Kitten was Tucker's answer to those who needed serious snow performance in a much smaller package. Unlike the larger, more famous Tucker models with 4 articulated tracks, the Sno-Kitten used just 2 rear tracks and a pair of front skis. This setup made it lighter and easier to transport, ideal for patrolling private properties, reaching remote cabins, or performing technical work at weather stations. The enclosed cabin, although small, provided solid protection from the cold and could fit 1 or 2 people at most. Its engine was usually a 4-cylinder gasoline model, air-cooled, producing about 60 horsepower. That was enough strength to take the Sno-Kitten across snowy fields, narrow trails, and icy ground. Its suspension was basic but effective for the vehicle's low weight. The tracks, made from rubber reinforced with metal, gave it great grip in soft snow and allowed it to go where regular vehicles would get stuck instantly. One of the Sno-Kitten's biggest advantages was how portable it was. It could be transported in a pickup truck or on a trailer without much trouble. This gave it an edge over bigger Tucker models, which required more complex logistics. Because of this, the Sno-Kitten found a home with radio technicians, power companies, and Forest Service teams who needed to work in isolated areas during the harsh winter months. Still, this focus on lightness and mobility came at a cost. The Sno-Kitten was too small for bigger operations and too expensive for simpler tasks. And as snowmobiles began to gain popularity in the 1960s, offering even more agility and lower costs, the Sno-Kitten slowly lost its place in the market. Its production ended quietly. Tucker chose to focus on its larger, more profitable models with more consistent demand. Even so, the Sno-Kitten left its mark as one of the most unique snow vehicles Tucker ever built. A few restored units still appear at historical vehicle events across the United States, proudly showing off the classic Tucker orange and shiny metal skis under the winter sun. It may have been small, but it proved that even the tiniest machines can have a big role in surviving the extreme cold. And speaking of surviving in frozen environments, the next machine on this list comes from a brand that dominated the snow scene for decades. But even they had projects that didn't quite make it. Thiokol-IMP. Thiokol's a name best known for its work in the aerospace industry. But for a time, the company was also a major player in snow vehicle manufacturing. One of its most iconic machines from that era was the Thiokol-IMP, a compact and versatile snowcat built specifically for professionals who had to work in remote, snow-covered areas. The name IMP stood for Industrial Maintenance Personnel, and that pretty much explains its purpose. It was created to support maintenance workers in the most extreme environments. Production began in the United States during the 1960s, and several versions were released over the following decade. The goal was clear: build a small, efficient, and reliable machine that could carry 1 or 2 people safely across frozen terrain. Most IMPs were powered by a V4 gasoline engine, water-cooled, delivering somewhere between 70 and 90 horsepower depending on the version. It used wide rubber tracks reinforced with metal for solid traction on soft snow and icy surfaces. Steering was handled by independent braking on each track, which gave the operator tight control, even in narrow spaces. It took a little practice, but once mastered, it was very effective. The design of the IMP was simple and tough. Its enclosed steel cabin had rectangular windows and enough space for 2 passengers to ride comfortably. There was also room in the back for tools, gear, or small loads. The model was widely used by utility crews, weather station teams, miners, and forest patrols operating in harsh winter conditions. The suspension was stiff, not fancy, but it got the job done. The real strength of the IMP was its reliability. In places where mechanical failure could mean waiting hours in freezing temperatures, it was highly valued for its durable and easy-to-repair construction. Some units ran for over 10 years with just basic maintenance. Still, despite its strong performance, the Thiokol-IMP eventually disappeared. The company shifted focus toward military contracts and space projects, leaving behind its snow vehicle division. That division was sold off, and the new owners chose not to continue producing the IMP, opting instead to invest in newer models that better suited the evolving market. Even so, the IMP developed a cult following among snow machine enthusiasts. Entire online communities are dedicated to restoring these vehicles, and some are still in working condition today on private land in both Canada and the United States. One restored unit, with its original paint, was even used recently on a photography expedition in the Appalachian Mountains. Proof that even out of production, the IMP still earns respect. If the IMP was all about compact strength and dependability, the next machine went in the complete opposite direction. A true giant, built to carry dozens of people over ice and snow, and even that wasn't enough to save it from cancellation. Foremost, Terra-Bus. When the mission was to transport dozens of people across frozen landscapes filled with snow, ice, and deep mud, few machines were as impressive as the Foremost Terra-Bus. Built in Canada by Foremost Industries, this massive off-road vehicle was designed specifically for Arctic and subarctic operations, especially in the oil and gas industries. It was a bus, yes, but built entirely from the ground up to survive where normal buses would sink after just a few meters. Production of the Terra-Bus began in the 1980s, and its design looked oversized from the very start. Measuring more than 40 feet long, it could carry up to 36 passengers, depending on the version. Its tall body sat on 3 axles, each with giant low-pressure tires. Unlike traditional snowcats that rely on tracks, the Terra-Bus used wheels. But wheels made for the harshest terrains. These massive tires gave it excellent flotation on packed snow, ice, and thick mud. The most common engine was a 6-cylinder diesel with a turbocharger, producing around 250 horsepower. It was paired with a heavy-duty automatic transmission built to handle extreme cold. The interior was well insulated, with heating systems and reinforced panels. The suspension used springs and specially designed shock absorbers to offer a surprisingly smooth ride, even over rugged ground. Its visual impact was immediate. Tall, wide, and intimidating, it looked like a mining truck modified for the Arctic. The deep rumble of its diesel engine echoed across frozen plains, while the giant tires left massive tracks behind. Riding in a Terra-Bus felt more like being in a grounded aircraft than in a traditional bus. It was stable, powerful, and reliable. The Terra-Bus was widely used in operations across Alaska, northern Canada, and even Antarctica. One of its most well-known uses was transporting scientists and tourists to and from polar research stations. In places like Churchill, Canada, you could see Terra-Buses carrying groups to safely observe polar bears in their natural habitat, far from danger. But even with all that success, the Terra-Bus couldn't last forever. Operating and maintaining such a large vehicle was expensive, and over time, demand started to drop. Newer, smaller, off-road vehicles with smart traction systems and better fuel efficiency began to replace it. Production slowly came to an end, and only a few units remain in service today. One of them, fully restored, still operates in a northern Canadian wildlife reserve, taking visitors on environmental observation tours. Even though it's no longer being made, the Terra-Bus remains one of the most extreme vehicles ever created for moving groups of people across frozen terrain. If you've made it this far, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Every like really helps. Hit the bell so you don't miss future episodes featuring the most mind-blowing machines ever built to conquer snow and ice. Now come with me, because after seeing a giant made to carry dozens of people in comfort through the cold, it's time to look at something much lighter. A smaller machine that still faced big challenges in the snow. Yamaha Sno-Scoot 80. While many companies in the 1980s were focused on building large, powerful snowmobiles for experienced riders, Yamaha took a different approach. In 1987, the Yamaha Motor Company, founded in Japan in 1955, introduced a completely new concept for snow fun: the Yamaha Sno-Scoot 80. It was small, lightweight, and easy to ride, made for beginners and young riders who were just starting to explore snowy trails. The Sno-Scoot 80 came with an air-cooled, 2-stroke engine with 80 cubic centimeters of displacement. It produced around 5 to 6 horsepower. That might sound low, but thanks to its very light frame and compact build, it had no trouble moving across flat snowfields or gentle hills. One of its best features was exactly that portability. You could easily load it onto the back of a van or pickup truck and take it anywhere. Surprisingly, the Sno-Scoot was comfortable to ride. It had an independent front suspension with leaf springs on both sides, and in the back, a sliding rail suspension with a single shock absorber. That setup smoothed out the bumps and made it feel more like riding a mini motorbike than a snowmobile. It was responsive, fun in turns, and stable enough for safe recreational use. The design was clean and sporty. Its small body resembled larger Yamaha snowmobiles, but in a scaled-down version. The seat was made for one rider, with simple, intuitive controls. Its two-stroke engine made a high-pitched buzzing sound, typical for that era, and that unique sound became part of its charm. Still, despite all these qualities, the Sno-Scoot didn't last long in the market. Its concept was great, but most of the snowmobile industry still preferred bigger, faster machines. And because the Sno-Scoot's price wasn't much lower than larger models, it struggled to find a solid place among buyers. Yamaha ended production just a few years later, and the Sno-Scoot quietly disappeared from showrooms. Today, finding a working Sno-Scoot 80 is rare, but those who have one know how special it is. You can see them at vintage snowmobile events or winter expos, often drawing attention from people who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s. Small as it was, the Sno-Scoot proved one thing clearly. You didn't need a huge machine to have unforgettable fun in the snow. After this compact snowmobile made for fun and light travel, the next machine on our list changes the scale completely. We're heading straight to the Cold War, where a Soviet behemoth was designed to cross Antarctica with labs, bunk rooms, and the kind of engine you'd expect to find in a battle tank. Kharkovchanka. In the world of snow machines, there are large vehicles, there are extreme vehicles, and then there's the Kharkovchanka. Built during the Cold War by the Soviet Union, this massive creation was designed with one clear goal: to establish a permanent Soviet presence in Antarctica by transporting people and supplies across some of the harshest terrain on Earth. And to do that, they spared no expense. The name Kharkovchanka translates to woman from Kharkov. In Russian, a direct reference to the city of Kharkov in present-day Ukraine, where the machine was designed and built. Development started in the late 1950s, and the first units went into operation during the 1960s and 70s. The vehicle was based on the ATT, a military artillery tractor, but it was completely redesigned to handle the brutal conditions of the Antarctic. The engine was a high-capacity V12 diesel derived from Soviet tanks, producing anywhere from 500 to 800 horsepower depending on the version. In some heavily modified units, the output could even reach up to 1,000 horsepower. That kind of power was necessary to move the more than 80,000 pounds of structure, which included a cabin, storage area, sleeping quarters, kitchen, bathroom, and even a laboratory. Everything was thermally insulated to handle temperatures below -50 degrees Celsius. The extra-wide tracks helped distribute the weight and prevent it from sinking into deep snow, and the articulated chassis allowed some flexibility across uneven terrain. Inside, the Kharkovchanka felt like a narrow railway car. It had small rooms, internal lighting, heating systems, and just enough space for 6 to 8 people to live and work for extended periods. It was, essentially, a military-grade RV made to survive in the white void. For many years, it served as the primary transport for Soviet expeditions in Antarctica, covering long distances between remote research stations. Thanks to its sheer size and endurance, it became a legend of the ice. But over time, problems started to pile up. Maintenance was difficult and required highly trained crews. Fuel consumption was extremely high. Its massive weight made it slow, and as technology advanced, lighter and more efficient alternatives started to take over. By the 1980s and 1990s, the Kharkovchanka was gradually phased out. Fewer than a few dozen were ever built, making each unit incredibly rare. Today, some abandoned models remain buried in Antarctic snow and ice, silent reminders of a time when technological dominance was a matter of national pride. There is at least one partially restored unit on display at a Russian museum, and rumors suggest that it could still run. If someone found enough diesel and had the courage to drive it through frozen wastelands, after seeing this Soviet monster built to conquer the ends of the earth, you might wonder, could anything be even bolder? Believe it or not, the last machine on our list tried and failed in a way the world would never forget. Antarctic Snow-Cruiser. Among all the vehicles ever created to conquer Earth's frozen frontiers, few have a story as bold and as disastrous as the Antarctic Snow-Cruiser. Built by the United States in 1939, It was designed as a cutting-edge mobile research base that would allow scientists to explore Antarctica in comfort and safety, carrying their lab, crew, and equipment across the ice. The idea was grand. The result became one of the most infamous engineering failures in polar history. The project came from the Second American Antarctic Expedition, led by Richard Byrd, one of the most respected polar explorers of his time. The Snow-Cruiser was designed by engineer Thomas Poulter and rushed into production in just 11 weeks. What rolled out of the factory was a behemoth nearly 55 feet long, weighing over 50 tons. And riding on 4 massive tires attached to adjustable suspension arms that could raise or lower the body. It was a futuristic idea, far ahead of its time. The Snow-Cruiser was powered by 2 diesel engines, together producing around 120 horsepower. This energy not only moved the vehicle, but also ran its onboard systems, including heating, lighting, communications, kitchen, bunks, and a research lab. From the outside, it looked like a naval ship placed on giant wheels. On the inside, it had enough room for a small team to live and work in isolation for weeks. On paper, it was a masterpiece. But when it finally arrived in Antarctica, the problems began immediately. The tires didn't grip the soft snow. The machine slid, struggled, and even got stuck, just trying to get off the transport ship. Attempts to add chains to the wheels or use wooden planks for traction didn't work. The Snow-Cruiser could barely move. Unable to fulfill its mission, the crew decided to repurpose it as a stationary shelter. It was parked, used temporarily as living quarters, and eventually abandoned. Over the following years, snow and ice slowly buried it. In the 1960s, another American expedition found it still intact beneath the snow, but soon after, it vanished again, possibly broken apart by a glacier or lost forever beneath the shifting Antarctic ice. To this day, no one knows for sure where the Antarctic Snow-Cruiser is, but its story lives on. It stands as one of the most daring attempts to overcome nature's harshest conditions and a reminder that even the most brilliant ideas can fail when tested by the real world. Today we explored machines that made history. Some were small and practical, others were gigantic and almost unbelievable. Some were forgotten quickly, others became legends. But they all had one thing in common. They were created by people who refused to accept the limits imposed by cold, snow, or isolation. These weren't just vehicles. They were a reflection of the human spirit, our constant drive to explore, to test boundaries, and sometimes to fail while reaching for something bigger. Now tell me in the comments, which one of these machines did you think was the most incredible? Which one do you think should have stayed in production? And which one do you respect, even if it failed, just for the boldness of being created in the first place? If you enjoy content like this, hit that subscribe button and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Give the video a like and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Every week we bring you new stories about the wildest machines that ever challenged ice, snow, and the most hostile environments on Earth. See you in the next video.